Hey, hey, what's
There
up, my
we
man?
are. It's Monday again.
It is Monday. Welcome everyone to Where's Your Heart? This is Torian. Of course, we have our co-host, my man, Mr. Royce. And how you feeling, man? How you feeling today?
Good, good. It's my first day with a microphone. Are you
I see
kidding
it.
me?
Hey, listen, you're stepping the game up, man. At some point, I'm going to get off the teleprompter headphones and actually graduate to where you are.
Don't give me that.
I want the big boy stuff, man.
This is the problem. We both love our toys.
We like our toys. That is for sure. But great day. Really, really excited. We have. I know
Yeah,
we say this every week, but I know this topic is going to definitely strike a chord with so many different people. It's a topic that exists, but it's also one of those topics that isn't really talked about a lot. So we've been able to put out some feelers and some advertising around it. Can't wait to talk about that. And as always, we want to thank all of our listeners, our viewers, all those
yeah,
people who
yeah.
have been supporting Where's Your Heart. This is our, what is it, ninth, 10th episode thus far?
Ninth.
Ninth?
Almost say
And
ninth.
we're gonna say I think you're correct. I think it's the ninth. And yeah, man. I mean, just we've really had an opportunity to grow with viewership, and it all comes from the support of everyone who has been a part of this. So thank you. We're
Well,
extremely grateful.
and people who are like pinging all week long, hey, I finally got to watch the episode. This was amazing, or did you guys miss this? Like
Yeah.
all of the stuff that just helps us generate more conversation around these topics, which is really like that's what both of us are about.
Yes.
Um, so with on that note, please do start a watch party, share this thing. I just shared it this week. I'm sharing the YouTube link to our live. So please go on there and like that. I see Susan; she's one of our constant supporters. It's just great to have people who are engaging this on whatever platform you're seeing it on.
Yes.
So thank you all.
And I'm in the
Um,
process of sharing right now. That's why I'm looking up. So continue to talk.
no, that's the so we're trying a couple of different things. We are going to be moving toward YouTube, of course, as the home base for this project. As we get better at managing technology, our wonderful Gen X selves that are not native to this thing. Um, okay, so gratitude, yeah, all over that. Should we dive into last week now? Like, we want to get to our guests. We're both so
That's true.
excited.
That's true. That's true. Let's jump right into it. Let's
All
jump
right.
right into it. Last week
So
now.
last week, so the big announcement over the last week, of course, was the selection of Senator Kamala Harris as the VP for the Democratic ticket.
Hmm.
Um, and immediately, like all the like happen because there's people like me who are, yay, thank you so much, Mr. Biden, for selecting not only a woman but a woman of color. Thank
Hmm.
you. Like the visibility, what this does for us as a nation. Like I remember I realized when one of my kids turned 16, I realized they had had half their lives with a president who was black, and just what that meant to them in terms of saw human beings was significant. And that I can't discount the fact that that means a huge amount to us today with Senator Harris on the ticket.
Yes.
So that part, yes. And then the other part of me went political in my head, and I'm like, well, these two should actually be like the conservative party in this country, and blah 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 blah. So like, okay, but today we're going to talk about this other aspect to this because almost immediately
Yes.
there were several discussions that just started going. One was a birther conversation.
Hmm.
Is Senator Harris even qualified to be president?
Hmm.
Because, her parents were not born in this country.
Hmm.
And so immediately that bullshit begins. And I'm calling that bullshit right out. That is fucking racist bullshit. And it can't be part of any discourse. There's nothing in the world that says that this is decent human behavior. It just can't. Sorry. Nope. Not a thing. So we're not going to pay attention to that any more than what was just said. This other interesting story began developing as both folks in the African American community or Black community and folks in the Indian American community. And by that, we're talking about folks from the country India in South Asia,
Hmm.
and both discussions sound eerily similar. Is
Mm,
she blank enough to represent us?
us. Yeah. Yeah.
Colorism. Here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. So the topic, definitely colorism. And a lot of people who I had a chance to talk to, even about like what we put out as far as marketing and to kind of promote the show, really saw it more from a political standpoint. And one of the things that we had to kind of reaffirming was we're using the political landscape to really set up a larger conversation, because there is
Yeah.
a much larger conversation that needs to be had. I think no question with her being nominated that that's something that is historic. And I actually think that it's something just like Barack Obama,
Yeah.
that shows that, hey, listen, maybe we're inching, and that, I will say inching, we are moving toward the ideals that we say are liberty and justice for all that we're striving to, because we certainly don't have that right now.
Yeah.
But for me, one of the more impactful parts of this was not just the nomination, but it was the narrative that started to happen within the Native Black American community specifically, because of her background and because of the fact that I believe that her father is of Jamaican descent, right,
I believe it's
and
her
then
father that's Jamaican and her mother that's Indian.
a
Yeah.
South Indian. And so then the conversation of, well, you know, does she really represent Native Black Americans? Is she Black
Yep.
enough?
Yep.
And so that's the meat to me, because that fits into a larger narrative of, what does this term, or what does this meaning of Blackness really mean? What does it look like? What is the culture that people talk about? But really what's happening now is either people are giving people permission or trying to take away their Black card, if somebody can actually do that. So
Yeah.
that's what we want to start to have this conversation
And
today.
and I wanna put out there that I think I'm not okay. I just have to say this.
Put it out.
This may not be my place. Um, I think there is something inherently problematic in a white supremacist society like ours, um, because that shit is pervasive. And so even when I am oppressed by the system that I benefit from as a white man, right? That the notion I keep coming back to Paulo Freire's "the seed of the oppressor that lives in all of us,"
Mm,
and what that does to marginalized communities.
mm,
Which, although I am a white man, I am also I have several different parts of my identity that are marginalized,
mm,
and so I experience this weird back and forth constantly on this shit.
mm,
Um, so when we talk about the seed of the oppressor that lives in all of us, it's that constant temptation to replicate the mechanisms that are part of our white supremacist society. And this is one of those places where I think we see this popping up and is problematic. Um,
mm,
is so anyway, yeah. We
mm.
have a clip and stuff. We should get to that. But
Yeah, we should. So we're gonna set this up a little bit, because some of our viewers, some people may have heard of the term colorism, or
yeah.
don't really know what the definition is. So one of the interesting things is we were actually able to find some content. This is on Good Morning America about 2 weeks ago that sets this up a little bit. So we'll play this as a clip, and then we'll give everybody a kind of a chance to chime in from there. All right.
She's pretty for a dark-skinned girl.
Their parents will call me negro, which means black in Spanish.
It's been an open secret for generations.
There's this like fetishization of light skin.
It was always black or white. Don't get too black.
Colorism, prejudice based on skin tone, and a preference for light skin over dark. The unfortunate phenomenon spread across all groups of color.
Within Asian Americans, this model minority mindset to distance yourself from other people of color by like positing yourself as like the most like hardworking and law-abiding minority in this country, in a way, in order to kind of like gain favor with white people.
Dr. Joy DeGruy, who studies racial trauma, says colorism is rooted in proximity to whiteness.
The whole notion that white is the best, the correct, the most intelligent, the most right about everything. And as you move along the color spectrum, of the darker you are, the less important, beautiful, viable, capable, all of those things that the society has imposed upon us based on that notion of supremacy.
Its impact woven into American society and can affect every aspect of life. Take a look at the differences in wages for a dark-skinned African American, brown skin, and a light-skinned African American. The study showing hourly wages among Blacks literally rising as skin tone lightens. Lighter-skinned minorities viewed as more intelligent by employers, even with identical education as their darker-skinned counterparts. Experts say these examples of colorism have long-lasting effects of both mental and physical trauma.
The anti-Blackness started with this whole idea that the darker you are, the less human you are. And so everyone's distancing themselves from that. I think multi-generational trauma is evident.
I hated the way I looked. I just wanted to like scratch the dark skin out of my face.
One time I was in the bathtub and I wanted to stay in longer so my skin color could get lighter. I just thought that's how it worked.
Anti-colorism organizations like the Beauty Well Project in Minnesota work to end the stigma against darker-skinned people of all races who face discrimination from society as well as their own communities.
I know I was not alone. I know I'm not the only dark-skinned girl that has been bullied, you know, so we need more dark-skinned girls and boys just to speak out.
So that is such a powerful message, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, and seeing that and thinking about that, I think about my own experience. And I shared a little bit of this, like growing up, the nickname that my family or certain people in my family, some of my cousins, they actually used to call me Tar Baby, right? So this is what I was called for, I don't know, probably 15 years of my life. And this is within my own family. And I remember as I'm talking about it now, I can feel my hands starting to shake a little bit, how traumatizing it was. And again, we were kids, and I know that things are actually said, and you know, I'm sure I said things when I was a kid that were traumatizing to other people. But this was something that was consistent, right? And this came from people who loved me. But then also I remember, you know, I did a part of my education and schooling in schools that were predominantly Caucasian. Yeah. And I remember many times where people would call me, you know, you're an African booty scratcher. And, you know, why is your nose so big? And I remember one time there was somebody in school that drew a picture of me. I mean, it's funny, but it's not a picture of me. And it was my dad, and I was a vacuum cleaner. I don't think I've ever told this story. I was a vacuum cleaner. He was holding me by my ankles, and then my face was like the head of the vacuum, and then my nose was like sucking up everything.
Oh my God.
Right. And I was like in dark face and stuff like that. So, you know, this is a real thing. This is something that I have my own personal experience with. So I definitely wanted to talk about it and talk about colorism and how important it is, especially with, you know, this whole conversation of just Blackness in general. Like, what does that actually, what does it mean? You know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So rather than hear just our stories, or really my story around some of this, one of the things that Royce and I thought would be really important were to bring in guests. And we have both of our guests here that are going to be talking about their experience with colorism and identity and just, you know, Blackness in general. One of our guests is an amazing human being who I've known for almost 2 decades. This person has won 7 Emmys, I think we confirmed on the pre-show. Just an amazing human being and has an eclectic background, but I want to give her the opportunity to talk a little bit about it when she comes on. So without further ado, our first guest I would like to introduce you all to is Miss Cary Hernandez. Cary, how are you? Hey. All right. So we have both of our guests here. So Royce, I know you're going to do a nice introduction for our second guest, and then we'll get rolling.
So, I mean, first off, in going through my friends list to find somebody that I knew that I'd connected with on this topic, because this isn't the kind of topic that you just out of the blue somebody ping, hey, how can you come talk with me about this?
Yes.
So I went back to my grad school time and found a friend from grad school, somebody who I know faced institutional racism we were just talking about it Saturday. Somebody who I know I respect for her ability to be able to talk to people like me, and not just like disassemble me in my stupidity as we deal with the topic. So somebody who's near and dear to my heart, and I deeply appreciate her coming on here. And this is Sonsiris Efanteo.
Hey.
Sonny, I probably mispronounced your name. I've been doing this for 15 years now. Can you say your last name for me?
Well, my government last name is Tamayo, Sonsiris Tamayo, and
Okay.
then S1E10 is an initiatory name. Thank
Awesome.
you, and excuse my informal background. There's a 5-year-old that might interrupt the space in the living room area. So.
It's okay. It's okay. I know.
Awesome.
I know. Cary said in case there's any big news outbreak, she has to run out of this room as well. So it's all good. Okay. But yeah, I mean, we didn't, and we intentionally didn't want to set this up too much because we've had conversations, offline about this, and
Right.
we really would like for the two of you all to just share your stories, how you identify, and just some of the experiences that you've had around the topic of colorism in.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to say our community. But the whole point in this conversation is, how are we framing our community? So, Cary, would you like to go first?
Oh, of course, I'd like to go first. Sure, super easy, super easy. No, it's exactly what you called me here to talk about, right? My family is from Cuba. Both my parents are from Cuba, but they're Black. So when I was always growing up, we were Black Cuban. That was it. There wasn't one over the other. You were just both. But it wasn't until you end up getting you go into the outside world, and then all different types of things, you start to interact with. And then all of a sudden there's, white Cubans. And then you start to learn, right, the differences and the value that is put on, like a white Cuban is better. They have better hair. So, some of the, I think one of the worst things, not worst, but, you grow up learning that, there's mulatto, right? So if someone is a lighter skin, they're called a mulatto. So they're a mix between white and Black. They still have Black in them, but they call them a mulatto. Much like Sonny's complexion, we would call her a mulatta, right? So there was a lot of that. So there's white, there's mulatto, and then there's Black, right? And then there's the comparisons of texture of hair and talk like that. So you don't get that till you go out of school and you realize the differences, that you're like, okay, I'm Black Cuban, but you wouldn't really see I grew up in Miami, and it really was a bit frowned upon in some places, not everywhere. I hate to generalize because there's always a story for everybody, but you often wouldn't see white Cubans and Black Cubans dating each other, right? Or they would date each other, but not necessarily married you. I've dated a white Cuban man before, but he wouldn't necessarily take me home to meet his white Cuban mom.
Wow.
I had my grandmother who would say, try to date a lighter guy who's lighter skin complexion, so your children come out lighter.
Para mejorar la raza.
Mejorar la raza, exactly. Better to improve the race, so your kid comes out with better hair. And things like that. So those are realities that just become a part of the conversation or a part of like your everyday life. And you don't, as you're growing up, you don't even realize that, wait a minute, this is not right. This is not healthy.
Yeah.
Wow.
I just dropped a line. Like
it's so many places to go. Sonsiris, I definitely want to hear from you as well.
Yeah, I'm Dominican. I was born on the island, but grew up in New York, so I don't have memory of that experience. But what that means is that I have all the beautiful blood in me. So I have Cuban, I have Puerto Rican, I have Haitian, I have the indigenous folks, I have the African and the European, and I did turn out mulatta. My grandfather looks like Royce. Well, he's passed now, but like an older version of Royce. And my grandmother looked like Torian. But there was this thing and then so all the aunts and uncles were on a range. But there was this thing of, like the phrase I use with Cary is, Casate Blanca para mejorar la raza is like you marry somebody white to better the race by trying to have outcome of a lighter skin or whatever. Even myself, at my complexion, I'm very aware that I do have a lighter skin privilege. However, even I grew up where I was teased for my nose. So for me, like having a nose ring was a big revolution for me, because it was like, I'm drawing attention to it, but I had a cousin that would tease me for having what she would call a truck nose. Like she said, it looked like the front of a truck because it wasn't pointy like hers. Yeah. Underneath my head wrap is what you would describe as wavy hair. Even the wavy hair was seen as something that either needed to be relaxed or straightened out on a regular basis. Even though it wasn't more coarser, it still didn't matter, even though it was supposedly like a more likable texture. So even me just being here with you today with my head wrap on and looking very ethnic is, my family would have like, oh my God, years ago, 30, 20 years ago, would have frowned upon that. And it really made me sad because as a young child, I actually thought I wasn't dark enough because I saw my grandmother and I saw that she was beautiful and I wanted to have dark skin like her. That everybody else wanted to be like more the Spanish. They wanted to be, we have Spanish blood and our last name is from Spain, and it's just complex.
And so with all this complexity, though, like the conversation is being had right now with Kamala Harris, and the big question, is she black? Is she black to represent Native Black Americans? So can you guys speak a little bit to your experience with Native Black Americans, like people who identify as Black that were born in the United States, that came through the educational system in the United States? How have those relationships been, or how have those types of interactions been? Has it been different, same?
I think it's exactly what we're seeing happen, right? With acceptance of a VP candidate, everyone saying, well, she's really not Black, she's Jamaican, or she's really not Black because she's half Jamaican and half Indian, right? I think I can say Sonny has experienced the same thing, is that when you go into environments with Black Americans, it's like, well, you're not really Black because you're Latin, right? You're not really like us. And that has always bothered me, has always offended me. Because again, when I was growing up, I didn't think I was better than anybody. My parents didn't raise us to think that we were better because we were Spanish. That just happened to be where we came from. But there was no denying the fact that we all knew that we got picked up and we were all stolen from our homeland. And I used to always explain it to my daughter. I used to be like, we just got dropped off somewhere else. We just got dropped off early. We got dropped off early, and that was it. And there's even a running joke I have. My godmother has shared. She would say it's like they got rid of the most rebellious ones force, the ones that were the ones they couldn't control. They pushed them off and then sent them into the Caribbean, right? So we've all come up with stories and ways to navigate and manage the pain that is slavery, because that's what we're talking about, right? But it's still the same. So when someone says that to you and they're saying, well, you're not really Black, you're Spanish, that's just, again, creating more divisiveness that we already have amongst ourselves, right? Like, here we go again. Yeah. My experiences of what my grandparents had to suffer, my grandmother had to suffer, at the hands of the Spanish slave owners and plantation, that is the same. It was very similar, right? Yeah. It just happened. So it hurts. It's not my first rodeo. So it still happens to me this day. I can say that it just happened to me as recent as the last 3 months ago. A colleague of mine said to me, you're not necessarily, Black enough to really understand, what's going on right now with the protests. And, that cut, because I'm here working just as hard, having just as many tough conversations with everyone about race right now and the racial reckoning that's happening. And it's hurting me as much as it's hurting anyone else. So when someone says, well, you're not really Black or Spanish, it's like, it's, at the end of the day, to me, it's just ignorance, and ignorance, and just not willing to, say, okay, well, the pain over here is not the same, the pain over there. Yeah. I'll let Sonny take it. Sorry, I talked too much.
Yeah, no, that's, it parallels. first of all, we're not in the Pain Olympics, and I think that's what, that's what the massa want us to do. I think it's completely racist and divisive to look at Senator Harris and bring up this stuff, just like they did with Obama. He's not white enough. He's not black enough. Well, first of all, those are all social constructions, right? Yeah. They can't even, when I'm as a Latina, I can't put in a race because that's not an actual race, because they cannot classify us by phenotypes because we look white, we look Asian, we look Native, we look black, so we can't even be categorized by race as a Latino. But in terms of the pain of the colorism, yeah, it's there. And remember growing up, in a primary black neighborhood, which I'm actually in right now. And, there was like, well, you're not really black, right? Or you speak a different language. And it's like, the black people in Brazil speak Portuguese,
They do.
The black people in Haiti speak French, right? And within the continent, people speak different languages, but I think is a byproduct of systemic racism being internalized. And so for a good majority, I try not to take it personal because I understand that it's not, it's been internalized through many generations. But I do think that as people are awakening more and more, there's more clarity among African Americans to say, you know what, we are kind of in the journey together. So I do have hope for that, but depending on what context I am, I can say to my friends who know me very well, I'm a black woman, and they understand that and they know that. And depending on another context, because I'm trying to be sensitive to others, I'll say I'm Afro-Latina. Either way you parse it out, I'm mulata, I have black. And by law in this country, if you have 1%, right?
One
black.
Yeah,
when they're looking at my resume, they see Sonsiris. If I have to be conscious when I go to a job interview, do I straighten my hair today? What am I wearing? Is it plain enough that they won't think certain way about me? What are my earrings saying? What is my lipstick shade saying? Because any of those things can be racialized and used negatively because I'm too, either I'm too dark or I'm too identified with the culture.
No, I mean, I get it. When I was telling Royce, and I think Karen and I talked a little bit about this, I think about and reflect on my life, and I have inched my way up toward the perception of what whiteness could be my whole life. Like graduating from college, I had the navy blue suit, the black suit with the red tie. I literally had the briefcase, like
Cary's
all these
laughing
things
right now because she saw this shit.
And don't get me wrong. I mean, I love suits, so it's not about the clothing itself. It's the context, and it's really the software that's driving the reason behind it. How do you fit in? How do you get into jobs? How do you code switch? Right? I mean, and then you get to a point to where it just becomes second nature. It's just what you do. And so it's interesting now as you start to peel it back, since we are having more open conversations and you self-analyze, it's like, wow, I really was doing some of these things to kind of acclimate. But to take it back to what you all were saying around us, right? Black people, how we're treating this, particularly around the VP candidate, is I think that it's just as detrimental as what could be happening in white communities where people are saying, I'm not a racist, but they're not actively doing things against racism. So I want to take a harder stance on colorism, because there are a lot of people, and I would even argue people watching right now, who will say, you might be black, but you can't represent us in a political form as a Native Black American. And I don't think
I had to jump in, but the political form of the president and the vice president is to be in charge or overseeing the whole entire nation. Okay? So the person can't be every single ethnicity ever at once, but so you understand, they have to represent Chinese Americans, they have to represent Korean Americans, they have to represent Pacific Islanders, Hawaiian people, they have to represent all kind of folks. There's no way one person will have every ethnicity. The point is that they get to represent us as a whole. And being black or biracial or multiracial is just as good as qualified. I think this is a distraction to the larger conversation of what's really happening. I think it's a distraction.
Yeah, and at the bottom of it is education, right? Because at the end of the day, none of us were actually really taught about Black history. There was like a couple of paragraphs, I think, in a few history books. And you have to be deliberate regardless and making sure that you educate yourself. I had to be intentional about in college, making sure I almost minored in African American history so that I could learn about it, because I didn't learn it in school. I had to take that upon myself, and I just wish that sometimes too, as Americans, we would also educate ourselves about what's going on around the world, right? Because I lived in, there was a time when I worked in Atlanta, and I remember where they're like, oh, you're Spanish. I go, oh, they're like, you Mexican? Well, no, there's more. There's more to the Spanish than just Mexican, right? So I think it's just everyone across the board needs to educate themselves and take a moment to realize that, sometimes we put ourselves in a bubble, and there's more to it out there. And there's so many stories that Black Americans have suffered, and I say Black African Americans have suffered here, that's been suffered in the Caribbean. Our stories are so alike. They're so similar. The pain, the discrimination, it's just, it doesn't matter where, you can copy it from country to country to country to country. Maybe some different versions of it, and some people have been able to, hide it away, and on Cuba, a lot of it, they hide it with nationalism. They're like, no, we're all Cuban. There's no black and white here. And there's sometimes it's worse, because they'll straight up lie to your face and be like, oh, there's no racism here. But if you look at who are the heads of government and who is really at the face of what happens in these countries, it's all the lighter skinned people in the country. And then the darker skinned people, don't have those positions in government, don't have those positions on camera. They just put the lighter, the better in front. And that still goes on today.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I saw a lot of that in Brazil. Brazil has actually, I believe, the largest population of Black diaspora. And you see the exact same thing, where it's kind of hidden under nationalism. And I would even argue, even here in the United States, that's happening a little bit now. It's like, hey, we're all Americans, or we're from the United States of America, because actually America is much larger than the United States, technically. So you got to educate folks, right? You got to tell people when they say America. What'd you say?
The U.S. of A.
Yes, the U.S. of A, and which we are, right? But there are different ways in which people are experiencing it as well. And that's what I try to articulate to people, where you can honor other people's experiences, but you also have to know and have context for your own and how we actually got to this point. But I want to circle back. Royce, did you have something else you wanted to ask or talk about? Because I have a question.
Some of the comments here, Zenda's comment about it's about the culture. Can she identify with our culture? Which I think is an interesting framing of this. Because when we talk, Torian and I have this conversation a lot. I'll speak to it from the white, from the white end of things. White is not an ethnicity. White is not a race. It's not the color of my skin. It's a fucking culture. Now I tend to have lighter skin than a lot of people in this country, and so I get that white projection on me. But that's really it's a cultural thing. It's that, and with whiteness, it's a void. It's a not having actual culture is kind of the whiteness construction. But that's different for folks in the Black community, where the question of do I name myself as you name yourself a native Black American? Do I call myself a Black American? Do I call myself an African American? Like what kind of, how do we talk about this? And Zenda's point is dead on there, in that we're talking about a culture, because your skin isn't black. We all have beautiful variations, and this part of my face is a different color than this part of my face.
Right.
So,
and I think we're talking about the social construct, and I definitely want to hear from our guests on this.
Yeah.
But when I hear Zenda's question, and I've heard this a lot, I always want to hone in on how are we defining our culture? What is our culture? And that, I think, is where this conversation of colorism fits into the larger conversation.
What's the touchstone that's important?
Well, I don't think we've really been able to distill that across let's just use the United States as our litmus test. we don't have 2 or 3 things to say, okay, these are the 2 or 3 things that are universally rooted in our culture, at least that I've heard of. I don't know.
Zenda might not agree with you.
Yeah, so let's go. Like, thoughts? Like, what do you think?
That's when she says our culture. I get what she's saying, and she's probably right, because I didn't grow up on Black culture. I grew up eating rice and beans. I grew up. It was a different food. You know, there were some things that were different. The way we cook, the way we season our foods, the way we talk, the way we celebrate coming into womanhood. Like, you know, in Spanish culture, you celebrate your quinces. So that's when a young woman is, you know, presented to society, and then it's time for her to say that she gets married. Whereas I believe in American culture, it's more like celebrating your sweet 16s. There are some, I think, yes, there are some cultural differences, because I have run into the cultural difference with Black Americans. But I will also say that it just depends. Like in Spanish culture, we know, like, for example, we can at least trace and know that our African religion came with us, and we've been able to maintain it. Like my past family can still practices that African religion that they brought from Nigeria. So that's part of our culture, right? Practicing that religion that came, practicing Santeria, knowing about those things. Not necessarily everyone was able to keep their culture going or knowing what their religions were from their ancestors that came through. Yeah, I know I'm going a little bit too far, but
no, this is exactly it. This is the point.
It's what we want.
So yes, I think there is differences I think there are some differences in culture, but that doesn't mean, I mean, I still went to, like, when I went to college, I still joined a Black sorority. I became a Zeta, right? I took part, we engaged a lot of, I don't know. I don't think that makes, because when I say, is it our culture, then it's, again, you're pushing me out. You're excluding me. Like, you're saying, well, then I'm not good enough. That I'm still not Black enough. What does that mean?
Mm-hmm. Were you done? Were you done, Cary?
Yeah, I'm done.
Sorry. I think it's a valid question. However, we're talking about the presidential candidate and the vice presidential candidate of the United States, and we got to think about, why is it that we're having these conversations that are limiting the conversation of who she is and what she can be in this country, and looking towards that, then looking at, can she identify with a portion of the population, when there's so many parts of the population that are more like a kaleidoscope, more like a big mixed salad that we could all like taste and thrive on, and think about who's creating these questions about the culture. The culture is always appropriate to have a conversation about the culture, because the culture is always is always evolving and getting redefined. We could talk about hip hop culture and talk about how it evolved from Hip Hop Boulevard, which I live on in the Bronx, to now. We could talk about the culture of Dominicans in the Caribbean. We could talk about Italians and how they evolved from a certain kind of status to an elevated status as white people versus just Italian and the Irish. We can talk about all that, but what we need to think about is we have 3 months to vote, and a lot of people are getting on the conversation about, is she dark enough? Is she Black enough? Is she Indian enough? Maybe she went back to the Baptist church, but we don't know, because she went to a Hindu church. You know, she's talking to Saraswati, you know, and not Jesus, you know what's going on there, right? So we have to think about not just the question, but where are the questions coming from? And are they distracting us from what we need to do, which is unify the vote, because we have a crazy person in that seat. And so we have choices. And then, as you know, let's unify the vote so that we can move forward and continue talking about the culture and evolving. But when we say, is this person Black enough, white enough, Spanish enough, it's very hurtful. It's very hurtful because there's nobody, no race, no culture, no religion, no identity that's pure. You can go to the continent, they're not gonna be pure. Any ethnicity is still not so-called pure. And even you see that in religion, which in my religion, you see that sometimes people want to say, well, let's go back to this, or let's go back to that because this is more pure. But you know, at the end of the day, it's not necessarily more pure anything. And we can, it's 2020, we're seeing how the globe is small. Something happened in China is affecting me here. Yeah. So we have to figure out how we're more alike, how we're more integrated than not. And I think that
I love you introducing the purity aspect. I read a paper this last year by Maria Lugones, who she dissected the notion of purity. And again, it's another tool of capitalistic white supremacy. Like, this is perfectionism. Again, it's a tool of capitalism. These are the things that keep us hungering and keep us in a scarcity mindset, which this whole fucking conversation about is somebody blank enough is part of a scarcity mindset. It's part of a thing that says, well, this has to be ours because this is all we fucking got. And we got to make sure that we're only letting the right people in. That's devastating. Like, if we want to talk about what we can gatekeep around, it's an experience of empire that includes slavery that is terrible. Like, I don't know. Those are my.
And this is a religious podcast, right?
No, it's not. The only thing that this is not political.
Bring it in.
You can bring in whatever you like. You can bring in whatever you like, but this is not religious. This is not political. Our only goal is to hold space for vulnerability, and for people to really speak from their heart. So there's no agenda around that. And you know, when people, because it's interesting. Like, I talked about my backstory, and you know, I'm pretty chocolate, but I've lost a lot of friends, or at least people who I thought were friends, over the past 3, 4, 5 months, over not just this conversation, but other conversations around, you know, my question of what is the Black experience? How are we defining that? What gives somebody their Black card or not, outside of just the melanin in their skin? And when I challenge that a little bit, and we can't answer the question, get a little bit of pushback. And so that's why we want to have this conversation, so that at least we can bring different ways of seeing things, different perspectives, and hopefully reach people and plant some seeds in people's minds that maybe they wouldn't have access to outside of Where's Your Heart. So that's the intention.
The thing is, to me, that the percentage model, the one drop model, was used against us. If only you have 1% of Black in you, or whatever, one drop of Black blood, then you're done with. Okay, that will be me too, boo. And so if the oppressor used that against us, why would we use that to exclude ourselves from our brothers and sisters in our community?
I don't know. I've never.
Like, my brother, Carly's my brother, my sister, Royce is my brother too. You know, but why should we exclude ourselves if we're talking about the culture? That means that the person that asks the question is a person of color, and I'm a person of color. So we're having various levels of oppression already.
Okay,
exactly.
So one of our viewers, Anthony, said colorism is what some people want when they want to be Black, or when it's acceptable, right? Like, it's like some people will chime in when it makes sense or it's convenient, and then some people will chime out. I think that's kind of an interesting comment, but I also think that it fits into, why is this coming from us to us? If we identify as Black, why is this coming from us to us right now? Do you think?
What do you mean by that? I don't understand the question.
Well, because the conversation around the VP candidate, a lot of that, the narrative around she doesn't represent us, is coming from Black people, particularly Native Black Americans. And they're saying, no, she's not my candidate. Wow. And so what I'm trying to figure out is, one, what is our culture? Like, how are we defining that as Native Black Americans? And that, two, who gives Black cards? Straight up. I mean, there's no other way to say it. Like, who's saying, okay, you're in or you're out? Like Candace Owens, right? She has very different political views than a lot of people, but there are a lot of people who say she's not Black because she has different political views. I disagree with that. I don't have to agree with everything that she says to say that she's Black or accept her for how she identifies.
Yeah, but I think we get to a point where, look, it just can't come down to is are you black enough? Are you white? You know, there's a thousand other things that a person does. What are their experiences? What's their education? You know, what do they know about government? What have they done? What have they accomplished, right? There's so many other things that go into that. And I mean, I know that there were, you know, tons of Black leaders that came out early on. Everyone's saying your VP pick has got to be Black. Your VP pick's got to be Black. You know, the Democratic Party has to recognize, you know, all the skin in the game that we've put in. You need, you know, you owe us. That's a lot of the talk that's been going on. So it's like, okay, give us somebody. And so I can understand part of it, because you're just kind of like, why can't it be someone, you know, that's Black American, that's from here, that, you know, that, no, she is from here. Like, listen, I sound like an idiot right now, right? But so I thought, right, that has different experiences. But let's not discount that. We can't discount her because she grew up here. She went to an HBCU. She went to Howard University. She's part of a Black sorority. She has immersed herself in the culture, right? Because you can be half this or half that and not immersing your culture. Look, the other night I had dinner with a woman. She's of Korean descent, but she didn't know anything about her Korean background, because I guess her mom wasn't a part of her life, and her mom was Korean. So she grew up with her dad, who was white. So she identified more with being white than being Korean, you know, and she didn't know anything about that culture. Right. So her culture was white culture, and that's where she felt comfortable. That's those are where her friends were. That's the circles that she was moving in. It's not her, you know, to a certain extent. Now it's on her to figure out whether or not she wants to learn about her different cultures. But, you know, I think there's more that goes into deciding who is going to be that candidate. You know, she's done the work. She's got the resume. She has the experience. We can't discount that. That's not fair either.
And listen, Michelle Obama was from South side of Chicago, and they came at her. Okay, they came at her sideways. Was she a professional enough? Did she smile?
Her arms.
Oh yeah, she was too. You know, she was two-tone. You know, was she too dominant over Obama? Was this? You know, so that this is what I'm trying to get y'all to think about is, you know, in general to the audience, is think beyond that conversation. Yeah, it's important, but is it so important that we rather stay in the smallness than to go in the bigness? When Michelle Obama was, you know, first lady, people did not like her from the gate. Let's keep it going. When she was campaigning with Obama, they had to have a lot of consultations, and she had to switch her style. She had to go from unscripted to scripted.
But you mean, are you talking about within people who identify as Black?
Yeah, even from the Black community. The Black community didn't accept Obama immediately. Okay. Because he had a white mother.
Yeah, I remember.
He grew up everywhere. You know, and did he sound too white?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's something that I'm. You
know what I'm saying?
I'm dark chocolate, but when I talk to people, they will say the same thing. Like, hey, you grew up half of your time in the suburbs. You went to these schools.
And so
you have a lot of friends.
We have that exception. Every time we have another hurdle to climb, that's double stigma, because then we're getting it from white folks and white supremacist society, and then we're getting it from our own folks.
And I've had that experience my whole life.
Right. We need to stop doing that to one another, because we're picking her apart. And if she would have been full African American, it still would have been an issue. You know, why is her hair not natural? Or I mean, it might be
oh my gosh,
that texture actually might be her texture because she's also Indian. But why is she not this, or why is she not that? Oh, even if she wouldn't have gone to HBCU, she's still a Black woman. Period. She's still Jamaican and Indian. She's still a Black woman. She's still a person of color. And I think I was talking with Royce on Saturday that, you know, what also affects this conversation is that we are in a capitalist society. And so we have this consumer mentality where we want the perfect candidate. We want the perfect person. And we're not realizing we're not getting a perfect person. We're getting a politician who is a human being. You can't get your perfect spiritual guru. You know, you can't get the perfect dark chocolate brother over there. You know, we can't get the perfect, reporter. Because we're humans, but we wanna live in this capitalist society, and they have to be like 100%, this. Let them do their job. Let celebrate them for what they have done and have accomplished, and hold them accountable when they're in office. But a lot of these conversation or distraction. And Torian, one more thing, I think that some of those people asking questions were bots that got infiltrated into our community. I'm not kidding you, brother.
No,
I'm not
you're probably right.
I do think there's some bit infiltration, because white people think like that. And they want us to think that way. Is that person Black enough? Is this person whatever? And they also want us to think that way. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of them infiltrated the conversation, particularly because now that we're online more, it's very easy to hide your identity. And it happened during the Trump administration, where things were during his campaign, where people were infiltrating conversations. And I think it's happening now. And we're for it.
No, you're right. You're right. No, it's definitely, we know it's real, but they want to cause more divisiveness. So it's just like, let's infiltrate. Let's just like heat up the situation, so people jump in to just make things worse, things that really aren't there. Right.
So I want to point out to Joanna Felipe on the YouTube thing, being Black is not a monolith. Like that right there.
That's right.
We have this beautiful spectrum of what it might mean. And I'm saying might mean because I'm very much a white boy sometimes. Like you've got everything within this beautiful kaleidoscope that you mentioned, Sonny. Everything from Clarence Thomas to Michelle Obama to Cary and Sonny. Like this is the largeness of this conversation. And she goes, Joanna goes on to say, Garvey was of Jamaican descent. Malcolm X was of Grenada descent. Are they Black enough? I mean, again, like
Zap. I mean, really.
So I'm conscious of time. We've got like 5 minutes left. I have a quote from Jackie Alexander. I don't actually know how to say her name. This is awful. The author that I just dearly love, but I've never heard her name pronounced. I'd love to put that out there at some point, but is there any other things that we want to wrap on? And just so our guests know, what we'll do next is we'll end the live feed. We'll send you new links, and we'll go to a after show to kind of debrief a little amongst ourselves and record some post-show content that we can put out there. But final thoughts, folks? Oh, come on. Somebody's got to go. I mean, I could just read this, but...
I just hold on, Miss Hernandez, por favor.
I mean, this hour flew by, so
I know it's fast. No, I'm grateful for the conversation. I'm grateful that it's about time. I'm actually excited about this because now I don't have to keep hiding about living on this hyphen, right? I've always had to live on the hyphens of I'm Black and I'm Cuban, or I've had to I either have to go this way or go that way. No, everyone needs to just accept me for who I am. I'm all these things. I'm a woman, I'm Black, I come from Cuban descent, and then I love American music, and I love hip hop, and I love myself a chocolate brother. Sometimes I was married to a light skinned brother. Just let's enjoy that we can be all these things and not be pulled in one direction. My next hope is that I don't have to pick between going to the Black Journalist Convention or the Hispanic Journalist Convention. At least now they're like merging as one. But I shouldn't have to. I shouldn't have to pick one thing or the other, right? I should be able to be all things and be everything that I am and bring that all to the table, because I can bring what I know about Black culture to the table. I can bring what I know about Hispanic culture to the table, and what I know about American culture to the table, right? Because my parents came here as immigrants, so they had to, we had to learn that culture too, or make it part of what we are. And so now we just have to accept it all, not just one or two things. And I'm excited about one more last thing. I'll say one. I'm excited because, as a matter of fact, my brother is married to an Indian woman. So I literally have, I call her the Black Cuban Indian princess niece, right, and nephew, and they're adorable and they're awesome. And Now she's going to be able to say, you know, I saw, you know, in her lifetime, there was a VP candidate or maybe someone who wins a VP seat who is that comes from the same, you know, comes from a similar background that she does.
Awesome. Awesome.
So
awesome.
it's all good things. It's all good things. I think we all have good things to look forward to.
Sonny, what you got?
I just also grateful to have this conversation. Thanks for having me on here. Because I, you know, even before when you asked me, I said, you know, can you talk to me more about it? Am I even qualified to speak? Is it okay to speak? Because I wanted to have my own context, because I want to make sure that, you know, I was within my realm. And I think it helped me to also identify was that just because somebody's lighter skin does not make them any less Black, any less Latino, any less anything. I mean, I was married to a light-skinned brother, you know, and he struggled. He struggled. I identify with my black culture more than him because he struggled, because he was not accepted by Black community.
That's hard, man.
He was seen as too white, as too this.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how much trauma that caused him as
I do.
to you know, to be excluded. You know, and so why are we doing that to one another is all I'm saying. Let's not do that to one another. Let's really embrace all of it. Let's embrace all of it, because we're not a monolith. We're a kaleidoscope. We're not a melting pot either, because I don't believe in that. I think we just really need to celebrate one another, and then also keep an eye on the bigger picture. You know, unity, especially during these tumultuous times, because it's a matter of survival. It is life and death right now for the kids in the cages, for you know, my senior citizens, you know, in residential housing, you know, dying from COVID. This is life and death. So let's elevate the conversation and make the table bigger for each other.
Yes.
Amen.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. We got to clap on that one. We don't have the sound effects yet. We're working toward it, though. We're gonna do the real thing. Well, Sonny, Cary, we really, really appreciate you guys just chiming in. It's been a great conversation, and I know you feel the same way. We could probably talk about this for another few hours, but just give us another few minutes. I'm going to send you some more stuff, and we'll kind of debrief this. Okay.
Can I share this? Sure. Can I share this quote before we go?
Oh,
that's right. The quote.
Yeah. So this is from her book, Pedagogies of Crossing. Jackie Alexander. I know I'm saying her name wrong. She's Caribbean, but she says, we are not born women of color. We become women of color. In order to become women of color, we would need to become fluent in each other's histories, to resist and unlearn an impulse to claim first oppression, most devastating oppression, one of a kind oppression, defying comparison oppression. We would have to unlearn an impulse that allows mythologies about each other to replace knowing about one another. We would need to cultivate a way of knowing in which we direct our social, cultural, psychic, and spiritual marked attention on each other. We cannot afford to cease yearning for each other's company.
Wow.
I read
that last fall, and I just, like, it was full stop, read it again, full stop, and I had to go back.
We cannot afford it. We cannot afford divisiveness.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We'll chime back in a few seconds.
Thank you all.
Wow, that's a good show. Listen, I feel like we're only 15 minutes in. I felt like we really just got started. So that's powerful. I'm so happy that they came in and kind of shared their stories. You know,
and thanks to everybody that's been commenting. We're going to do more with the comments in our post show here. We've got a lot to dive into, but thank you all for tuning in. This is not the end of the conversation. I know as soon as we started talking about colorism, people started being, hey, I'd love to talk with you about it, but this isn't the great day. So first off, I can't tell you guys what it was like for both of us to ping friends and to have Sonny and Cary say yes at such short notice. And then to also know that we're going to get to have this conversation again next week or the week after. So
yes.
Please know
Thank you all.
this is not the end.
Not the end. Thank you so much. Please make sure you share it to anybody who you think is ready to receive the message of vulnerability as a key core human strength. And have a great Monday. See you guys later. Where's your heart out?